All right, y'all, slabs are flat. It's time for epoxy. Let's get them ready. So I got the slabs on the workbench. I'm about to rip one straight edge on each slab. I got it sitting on foam just to save my workbench, so when I cut through the piece, it'll cut into the foam and not my workbench. So I'm gonna get these sides ripped down and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright y'all, so it is time to pour the epoxy. I have my sheet of melamine up there. I just marked out the dimensions that I'm going to cut it at. So I'm going to use my track saw real quick and get this cut to its final dimension. Well, I gotta reclamp it because I don't want to cut into my workbench, so give me 1 second. Alright, so now I got it moved over off the bench. Clamped it in the corner so it doesn't fall off. Now I'll get to cutting. One cut done, one more. I'm gonna save the scraps because I'm gonna use them as the end pieces for my dam. So I'm gonna go cut that and then I'll get the dam put together. Alright, so the dam is cut to, well, not the dam, the bottom part of the dam is cut to its final dimensions. So that smaller piece, the second one that I just had cut off, I'm going to cut that into smaller strips that are going to go on the end and keep the epoxy from running off the table. Alright, so I got two pieces. I cut these at about 3 inches wide. These are gonna be on the ends like that. They'll actually be down here like that, but that's gonna keep the epoxy from falling off the end of the table. You don't have to use melamine if you have scrap 2x4s or plywood, you can put tape over it. And I'll show you what kind of tape in just a second. So where were we? Oh, tape. So, sheathing tape. Lowe's, Home Depot, Tyvek. Lowe's, Home Depot. Lowe's, Home Depot. They're both white. They're near the roofing section. You know, usually by the lumber you can find that. This is solid when you're not using melamine. So for small epoxy projects like this, when you're pouring it and you want to seal the back, you throw the tape down here, and this tape prevents the epoxy from coming through, and it also comes off. The epoxy does not adhere to the tape. Easy way, super easy cleanup. So I'm gonna use some just as double protection on this mold, but it's not necessary. So I know you can barely see it because it's white on white, but instead of like measuring all the way down this little piece, I'm just gonna put it right here, score a line. Now my line's there. I mean, you can't even barely see it, that little pencil line. And now I'm just gonna flip this board around, countersink. You don't even have to countersink, just pilot hole some screw holes. Then I'm gonna screw this in here, and then I am gonna run a bead of silicone through here. Now, if you had tape over this, that's also gonna make it a little thicker and make that seal even better. To make your life a little easier when you are drilling your pilot holes and sinking your screws, just throw a couple brad nails in there. Just keep it in place for you, that way you're not fighting it. Now I'm just putting 5 screws in. If you want to go overkill and make it like Fort Knox, feel free. But I don't feel the need since I'll be using silicone. Good to go. So as you can see, there's a tiny little gap there in between, especially where there was a little bit of tear out from the cuts. Epoxy will 100,000% make it way in there. So that's how I'm gonna run a bead of silicone across there. So I needed a clamping solution to put downward pressure on the table, and my solution was to cut some small little blocks here, attach them to my bench, and then screw the 2x4s down into those blocks. I have lots of downward pressure. I sealed all of the edges with some silicone, so now I'm gonna get to pouring. I'm gonna be using TotalBoat 2-to-1 high performance epoxy resin. It's a 2-to-1 system, so 2 parts resin to 1 part hardener. I'm gonna mix them in the containers, combine them, throw some pigment in there, and get to pouring. But with TotalBoat, if you're using this product, 1/4-inch layers. You go over that, it's gonna bake and it's gonna crack. This is not a deep pour system, so you have to use layers if you're using this product. This for a couple minutes, and then we'll pour it. first layer, I'm just gonna dip this foam brush in the epoxy, and I'm just gonna kind of put a sealing layer on the edges here to prevent air escaping on the subsequent pours. So just real quick, running down the live edge sides. So first layer has been poured and is good to go. 240 ounces is what it took. It's kind of more than I thought for one layer. But I got the heat gun. I'm gonna pop these bubbles real quick and get a final depth so that I can measure and make sure I know exactly how much epoxy I need to complete the project. So I'm gonna get to it.